The Hells Angels have long been associated with ruthlessness, occupying the pinnacle of all that is glorious in the motorcycle club world. But amidst this riveting club are a few good and bad apples that have made a name for themselves. From MMA champions to violent drug dealers, these men have given the Hells Angels a distinct reputation, and today, we shall delve deep into their lives and how their actions made the Hells Angels the most famous motorcycle club in the world. In the dark underbelly of Frankfurt, where secrets and shadows intertwine, one man rises to defy all expectations. And is a member of the club himself. This surprisingly loving family man presents his extraordinary life on social media with success. With hundreds of thousands of fans giving him influencer status, he does not shy away from promoting the Hells Angels. But how does a boy from humble beginnings rise to become a prominent German Hells Angels influencer? Born in the bleak November of 1986, Christian Eckerlin is an unassuming boy hailing from a town near Frankfurt. He starts life with big dreams. Top on the list is becoming a professional football player, and he gets closer to this dream when he is invited to a trial session with a renowned football club at the tender age of 16. On the first training sessions, he flops, but the coach sees a relentless fire burning within him and gives him a second chance. His relentless ambition and unwavering dedication leads him to sign a contract with SV Darmstadt 98. For years he toils in the second league, striving for greatness, but success in football remains elusive. His is a twist of fate that propels him towards a new path. Eckerlin's appetite for more than just football has always been evident. Since the age of 15, he has been honing his skills in the boxing ring alongside his football pursuits. An unexpected altercation at a party becomes a turning point when he defends himself against 4 attackers, leaving 3 of them sprawled on the ground. It is here that fate intervenes once again, as Daniel Weichel, a professional MMA fighter, witnesses his remarkable abilities and extends an invitation to train. Mixed martial arts is a combination of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, and wrestling. It is based on 3 main components: striking, grappling, and ground fighting. These mixed martial arts become Eckerlin's new passion. Christian as a fighter is a very dedicated guy. When he comes to the gym, he is there 100%, and he tries to give 100% of himself. His obsession with MMA burns brighter with each victory, propelling him into a whirlwind career. By the age of 19, he is winning professional fights, demonstrating unparalleled dedication. Intriguingly, Eckerlin leads a double life. By day, a fighter with boundless energy, and by night, a bodyguard at a strip club owned by a powerful Hells Angels member known as Schnitzel Walter. As destiny would have it, Eckerlin's path crosses with Dominique, the boss's daughter, on a sweltering night in Ibiza. Just after arriving in Ibiza, he gets stuck in the elevator where he takes off his clothes because of the heat. The doors open and standing in front of him is his boss's daughter, Dominique, who he meets for the first time, shirtless. Back in Germany, he is asked to keep an eye on her multiple times, and they end up falling in love with each other. But Christian's life is anything but a fairy tale. Niels Schlegel, a good friend of Christian, explains to him the importance of finding a sponsor in order to succeed in the MMA scene. Walter Burkhardt, alias Schnitzel Walter, the powerful German Hells Angel, agrees to fund him. Now Christian is ready to take off. He goes on to meet world champion MMA fighters such as Georges St-Pierre, who help him to improve his punch technique and coordination. Eckerlin's exceptional dedication pays off. He wins 6 fights in a row and feels untouchable. On top of that, Christian becomes a GMC welterweight champion and gets an award for the GNP1 Knockout of the Year in 2010. But in the following years, Christian is unable to maintain his streak. He fights against very experienced MMA talents inside the Russian M1 Global League, including Arsen Temirkanov.
In the history of Octagon.
Oh my goodness, that is it. For me, it clearly was a low blow.
The rematch, held on October 15, 2022, sees Eckerlin confront his opponent with unwavering determination. All the tickets are sold out. Rounds of grueling combat lead to an electrifying climax, as Eckerlin secures victory through a rear-naked choke. It is a moment of redemption and triumph, solidifying his legacy in the MMA world. But beyond the cage and the shadows, Christian Eckerlin leads a life of contrasts. A loving father, a producer of YouTube videos, and a connoisseur of sports cars, he unveils his opulent lifestyle on social media, intertwined with glimpses of his cherished family. His fleet consists of a Lamborghini Urus, a Porsche Cayenne, a Ferrari 812 GTS, and a Porsche 911. Eckerlin is blessed with 2 children and a supportive wife. Many may think that he is aggressive or unruly due to martial arts, but it's just the opposite. He is a very calm and loving father. With over 170,000 subscribers and 44 million views, Eckerlin has become an influential figure on YouTube. His videos showcase not only his extravagant life, but also his training sessions with celebrities, aiming to reshape the German MMA landscape with every fight. In his next fight for Octagon, Eckerlin wants to change the German MMA scene. His opponent hasn't been revealed yet, and we can only wait. But going with how things have been going, Eckerlin will likely defeat his opponent and also rank up at the Hells Angels. And yet, amidst all this, a lingering question remains. How can a Hells Angels member risk exposing himself and his family on the unforgiving terrain of the internet? His story began in anonymity, a man navigating life's twists and turns. Yet, against all expectations, he found himself at the forefront of the Hells Angels, showcasing the remarkable journey from ordinary to extraordinary. How did he do it? How does one rise from a nobody to the Hells Angels president? Well, here's how. Vladimir Walter Stadnik, the man who sets the ball rolling into a new era of organized criminal biker gangs. But unlike your typical biker boss forged under the fire and pressure of war, this one forced his way into the biker world. Unprovoked, he enters this world as an inexperienced kid with a hunger to do more, hanging out with the big boys club, and in no time becomes the national president of the Hells Angels. Some hate him, others fear him, but most of them want his head on a spike. If there's smoke, he is the one lighting the fire, and if there's a VIP list of most wanted gang leaders, he isn't just on it. He wrote it.
Stadnik, a figurehead in the criminal underworld for many years, was apprehended earlier today.
From secret strategy meetings to notorious alliances and criminal undertakings that would easily rival a Hollywood thriller, Vladimir isn't your everyday biker with tattoos and the signal leather jacket on a Harley Davidson. He has all the twisty, dark alleys of biker gangs at his fingertips. But how does a Ukrainian immigrant rise to head the biggest motorcycle club in Canada? What's so special about him, and how did he do it? Well, if you're into tales of roaring engines, buckle up for a wild ride. Born in 1952 into a family of Ukrainian immigrants in the Niagara Escarpment, Vladimir Stadnik grows up in a neighborhood known for its high rate of petty crimes. While he doesn't show signs of getting into the crime life, his intelligence doesn't go unnoticed. As one of his teachers says this about him in the book Fallen Angel,
he clearly had a great deal of natural intelligence, but he was impossible to motivate. It was almost like he didn't want to succeed.
But then he did, and in ways no one thought he could. When he enters high school, Vladimir quickly gains a reputation as a drug dealer, and everyone now knows him as Nugget, a nickname that he holds onto years later, together with his love for dressing flamboyantly in extravagant jewelry, chains, and rings. As if drug trafficking isn't enough, he joins a biker gang while still in high school, and that's where his journey in the criminal motorcycle underworld begins. In his teenage years, everyone around Vladimir feels like he has outgrown his age, and his decision to join the Cossacks vindicates their worries. Before joining the gang, it has a different name and is not so famous, except for its members' reputation of keeping their hair long and running it through holes they drill in their bike helmets. In his first act of gang dominance, he names the gang the Cossacks in reference to his Ukrainian heritage, and his time with them is filled with controversy. In October 1970, Vladimir is arrested with LSD tablets in his pocket. He makes bail but is arrested shortly after for being in possession of hash with the intention to distribute it. In his preliminary hearing, his biker friends cause trouble in and outside the courtroom, threatening the police officers who were about to testify against him. While he is convicted, it's just the beginning of an enduring legacy that would see his name etched in the history of motorcycle clubs. When he finishes his sentence, Stadnik comes out a reformed man, except he's not looking to abandon his ways, but to find an upgrade. At the time, the Satan's Choice is the most powerful motorcycle club in Ontario, and luckily, Stadnik is friends with their president, Mario Parente. He wants to join Satan's Choice, but Mario thinks otherwise. He informs Stadnik that he can't join just because he is 5'4" tall. Stadnik doesn't take the disrespect lightly, and this sets the ball rolling for years of bitter rivalry. While he abandons the Cossacks and joins the Wild Ones in 1977, while Satan's Choice partners up with the Outlaws. In The Road to Hell, Hamilton police officer John Gordon Harris talks about Stadnik.
He was a little short guy. He certainly wasn't the most visible member of the gang. He was just a face in the crowd. He was almost invisible, but he did have a head on his shoulders.
He goes all out to disprove Mario and the Satan's Choice gang's decision not to take him in, and by 1978, he is the leader of the Wild Ones in an era dominated by the Mafia, who hire outlaw biker gangs to do their dirty work. Still, Stadnik is nowhere near satisfied by the dominance of the Wild Ones, as other clubs view them as inferior and nothing to worry about. He contacts the national president of the Hells Angels Canada, Yves Buteau, looking for a merger. This action sends seismic shockwaves in the motorcycle underworld, and the outlaw MC, which had joined with Satan's Choice MC, take notice of this. Despite warnings by other outlaws to stop associating with the Hells Angels, Stadnik remains relentless. Due to this, most of the Wild Ones members get murdered. He takes the initiative to personally visit Hells Angels president Yves Buteau in Montreal. While in Montreal, two contracted outlaws follow the Hells Angels around to find the venue of this meeting. During the meeting, held at Le Tourbillon Bar, the two outlaws start a shootout, which leaves 3 dead and many others injured. Stadnik survives the massacre by hiding under the table. However, when he returns home, he finds that the Wild Ones members have already abandoned the group after agreeing to vote themselves out of existence. Not one to give up easily, he takes a stand to operate alone in Hamilton as the only Hells Angel, and he is not done yet. This is just the beginning. By 1982, Stadnik had risen through the ranks to become a respected member of the Hells Angels, and his ambition clearly beats his inability to hear and speak French. It is for this reason that he came from Ontario with another Wild One turned Hells Angels, Noel Mailloux, who serves as his interpreter until they return to Hamilton in December 1982. Stadnik hopes to lie low for a while before setting up a Hells Angels chapter in Ontario, but his plans are derailed by Mailloux. During their lengthy cocaine binge, Mailloux and his stripper girlfriend Connie Augustine got into a disagreement. Mailloux unsuccessfully attempted to murder her, killing her 4-year-old son and her best friend instead. Mailloux also attracts attention to himself when he is caught wandering the streets, shooting at anyone within sight. While he is arrested and convicted, it is Stadnik who feels the most affected by his actions. The incident destroys the reputation of the Hells Angels in Ontario even before Stadnik opens his chapter. But in July 1983, Yves Buteau, the National Hell Angels president and Stadnik's mentor, establishes the first-ever Hells Angels chapter outside of Quebec after convincing the Satan's Angels Biker Club with its 3 chapters to join the Hells Angels. En route to the opening ceremony of the new chapter, Mario Parente, president of the Outlaws Club, sees them. In a rash, Parente and his fellow outlaws spray bullets on the bus at Mr. Mugg's Coffee and Donut Shop in Wawa, hoping to kill Michel and Nadeau. While his attempt is unsuccessful and no one is killed, it serves as an indication of how the outlaws feel about the Hells Angels moving into Ontario through Stadnik's newly formed chapter. Instead of a new Hells Angels chapter in Ontario, the patchover eventually takes place on July 21, 1983, in Vancouver Island, where the Satan's Angels are based, establishing a new chapter in British Columbia. On Stadnik's end, things aren't going as planned, and before he can pack his bags for another adventure, another problem arises. This time, a bigger one. On September 8, 1983, Buteau is assassinated alongside Guy Gilbert in their meeting to discuss another patchover for the Kitchener chapter of Satan's Choice. The assassin is later identified as Gino Goudriau, another outlaw, and for many who know Stadnik, that is almost the final straw to mark the end of his career, especially as he still isn't a fluent French speaker. Luckily, he has made friends in higher places, so even the new national president, Michel Langlois, believes Stadnik is the best suited to start the Ontario chapter of the Hells Angels. At this time, on top of his full patch, he is wearing a filthy few patch, only given to those who kill for the gang. However, he still has a lot to do, and considering the strength of the other outlaw gangs and the mafia families of Hamilton, he still has to keep a low profile. Just as Stadnik is beginning to find his feet, tragedy strikes again. This time he is in Quebec on his way to the first memorial of Buteau when a Catholic priest, driving in a hurry to meet the visiting Pope in Montreal, runs him over in his motorcycle. Stadnik suffers third-degree burns from the resulting fire, leaving him with horrific scars all over his face and losing half of 2 of his fingers and much of his nose. Langlois requests his right-hand man, Réjean Lessard, to organize for the 13th Tribe biker gang from Halifax, who are interested in joining the Hells Angels, to guard Stadnik at St. Joseph's Hospital in Hamilton. Believing he is in danger, Stadnik also requests the police guard him, and they do so at night while the bikers watch him during the day. And while some officers feel like it compromises their integrity to watch a known gang member, he is a citizen like everyone else. As a reward, the 13th Tribe biker gang is allowed to join the Angels, becoming the first in Atlantic Canada. Meanwhile, Stadnik becomes even more introverted thanks to the burns, and he moves to a trailer park in Carlisle, Hamilton. If there's ever a perfect definition of lying low, Stadnik has to be it. While living in the trailer, he establishes a good rapport with his neighbors, some of whom are later surprised to learn that he is part of a bike gang. While living in the trailer park, he tries to avoid trouble, and when his neighbors find a plastic bag full of amphetamines, the police put it back, hoping he'd pick it, but he isn't falling for their trap. His cautiousness extends to where he holds his numerous meetings with the Hells Angels, including his back office at the Rebel Roadhouse bar in Hamilton, which he was using to plan drug routes and expansion strategies. The Outlaws, led by Parente, are hot on Stadnik's heels. But when Parente is arrested and Stadnik becomes the national chairman, his influence, especially in the drug trade, grows significantly. Stadnik's first order of business is to expand Hells Angels' reach, and he starts with the Vikings, an outlaw bikers club based in Quebec City, where he places his friend and associate, Maurice Boucher, in charge. In August 1988, he is arrested at the house of a known former Satan's Choice member and prominent drug dealer and smuggler, Douglas Freeborn. However, The charges are dropped after Freeborn covers for him, claiming the 11 ounces of hash recovered from the raid had nothing to do with Stadnik and that they were his. During the court proceedings, he emphasizes that he is not even the president of the Hells Angels, hoping to continue his practice of laying low, even though this is just the first in a series of drug-related activities that Stadnik is linked to over the next few years. By 1990, he has already established himself as one of the most dangerous Hells Angels in Canada, but he continues expanding his drug empire. First, he identifies Manitoba as one of the most important provinces to expand into, as journalists Julian Scher and William Marsden refer to it as the axis of distribution for any drugs moving east and west in the country. Ontario also becomes a crucial cog in the business, as it is where most of the drugs from Montreal into the Prairie provinces are smuggled through. As he continues to establish connections across the country, he becomes the Hells Angels ambassador, not only traveling around to forge new alliances, but also to proceed with drug sales. Stadnik is good at eluding arrest and prosecution, and he is even daring enough to call Officer John Gordon Harris of the Hamilton Police at his workstation to complain about his solid gold belt buckle shaped in the form of the Angels' Death Head logo that the police had damaged while arresting him. He is confident that the police are unable to track him down, and he furthers the Hells Angels agenda by dividing other gangs and then absorbing them into the Angels' activities, including drug trafficking. By 1998, he has commissioned some of the most dangerous Hells Angels chapters, including the Sherbrooke chapter, which has since established itself as a dominant force in the world of outlaw biker gangs in Canada. In December 2000, Stadnik inspires a host of Ontario-based biker gangs, including Satan's Choice, the Lobos, the Vagabonds, the Paradise Riders, the Last Chance, and a section of the Loners, to join his gang in a widely publicized ceremony. The mass patchover is one of its kind, leading to the instant growth of the Hells Angels in the Greater Toronto area into the largest chapter in the world. However, having so many members means difficulty in leadership, which Stadnik is about to find out the hard way. In 2003, the sloppiness and mismanagement of information by some high-ranking officials working alongside Stadnik led to his arrest in Mexico. He is brought back to Canada and charged with 13 counts of murder, 3 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of narcotics trafficking, and 2 counts of attempting to smuggle narcotics. While the charges don't stick due to a lack of concrete evidence, he knows the police are onto him, and he opts to lie low and put a hold on his quest for expansion. But he can hide for so long before he is arrested again in 2004. This time, the police are prepared to put an end to his reign of terror, and he is sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for convictions ranging from conspiracy to murder to drug trafficking and involvement in gang activities. In 2014, he is paroled with strict instructions forbidding him to avoid any contact or association with biker gangs for 5 years, after which he walks back into the Hells Angels world. By the time of his conviction, Stadnik has played his part in ensuring the Hells Angels are set for life, having grown them in numbers and strength. From being born to immigrant parents to becoming one of the most influential figures in the history of the Hells Angels, Stadnik's journey is nothing short of remarkable. Our story takes an exhilarating turn as we delve into the life of a resilient leader, a biker boss whom the FBI found challenging to restrain. Against all odds, his unwavering determination and strategic brilliance become the focal point in a saga of triumph over adversity. Sonny Barger, a man who has often been described as the godfather of the outlaw biker culture. A man whose story reads like a Hollywood blockbuster script, filled with guts, glory, and plenty of two-wheeled mayhem. From his fearless leadership within the Hells Angels to his adventures on the open road, his life is a roller coaster that even he doesn't want to get off. And why would he when he leads one of the most notorious motorcycle clubs in the world? From a disturbed upbringing, he rises against all odds to become the very essence of what it means to be a rebel, a renegade, a true outlaw, brushing shoulders with the FBI on the way. Barger is known for living on the edge and hardly by the rules, and his legend is bigger than the American highways he once ruled. But who exactly is Sonny Barger? And what makes him stand out in the outlaw world? Rev up and take on this wild journey of his life and times. In the beginning. In October 1938, Sonny Barger is born as Ralph Hubert Barger Jr. to a mixed family living in Modesto, California. The family's living conditions are not the best, but it doesn't take long for the problems to compound. When he is just 4 months old, his mother moves away, leaving him and his elder sister, Shirley, in the care of an alcoholic father and a Pentecostal grandmother, who both don't make the best job of it. Things go from bad to worse when Barger's father loses his job as a day laborer on the Oakland docks, but he still tries to make something of his life. Despite being suspended from school for assaulting teachers and fighting with other students, he tries to make a living working at a grocery store before he joins the Army. In the Army, he develops an interest in masculine camaraderie, learning how to disassemble weapons and the discipline in general before he is released for forging his birth certificate to join. Upon his return from the Army, Barger tries to lead a normal life by taking up menial jobs while living with his father in a single residence in a hotel and later moving in with his sister's family. However, life becomes harder, forcing him into life decisions he never imagined making. Life as a biker. Having been in the military for over a year, Barger has built a network of several military veterans, and he uses that to his advantage, bringing them together to form his first motorcycle club, the Oakland Panthers. At this time, most motorcycle clubs do not admit ex-policemen and military veterans into their clubs, and the Oakland Panthers Club provides a sense of belonging for these individuals. However, the club is unable to sustain itself, and it gets disbanded in 1957, less than a year after its formation. Despite failing in his first attempt, Barger is determined, so together with a group of bikers, he forms the Hells Angels in April 1957. For the first time, they wear a logo with a small skull wearing an aviator cap set within a set of wings, which is later copyrighted as the Hells Angels Death's Head logo. With time, Barger establishes himself as the most famous biker in Oakland, with people often mistaking him for the founder of the Hells Angels. Unknown to him and his colleagues, there are other older chapters in California using the Hells Angels name, after an encounter with an established member of the Hells Angels Southern California chapter. Barger realizes that there are other small chapters. He embarks on a journey to learn more about the history, existing rules, and procedures of the established Hells Angels, after which he is appointed the president of the Oakland chapter. 1958 proves to be an eventful year in Barger's life, as he is proclaimed the de facto national president after the founder of the San Bernardino chapter, Otto Friedloh, is imprisoned. And it doesn't take time before he starts making major changes. Taking the reins. As the national president, one of the first orders of business for Barger is to relocate the national headquarters from San Bernardino to Oakland. It is either that, or he has to move town so that he can run the Hells Angels affairs more effectively, and the decision is an easy one. Under his leadership, the bike gang becomes increasingly strong, and his direct involvement in its activities leaves him with a fractured skull after a brawl with Oakland police in 1958. He goes on to strengthen the club's ethics by introducing new, stricter rules for admission of new members and the establishment of new chapters. With a more organized approach to their activities, Barger's Hells Angels become an increasingly attractive club for bikers seeking to join a top club. This leads to growth not only in policy implementation, but also in numbers. It also means the establishment of an impressively extensive narcotics network, all despite the fact that he specifically implemented rules against drug burns and using dope during a meeting. In 1960, Barger convenes a meeting of the leaders of the Hells Angels and other California motorcycle clubs. According to former Hells Angels member turned police informant George Weathern, He calls the meeting to discuss the challenges that the clubs were facing, and harassment by the police comes on top of the list. Barger maintains that the law enforcement agencies should consider Hells Angels members as law-abiding citizens who pose no threat to anyone around them, but the authorities think differently. A bike life of crime. Before 1963, Barger's face is relatively unknown to the local authorities, and he prefers to keep it that way, as he can get away with anything as long as he can cover it up well. Moreover, he wouldn't want to expose himself as the national president. However, things take a quick turn later that year when a standoff ensues between the local police, the California Highway Patrol, and the Hells Angels on their way from an outlaw motorcycle meeting in Porterville. The encounter sets a chain of events rolling, which ultimately leads to Barger's arrest for possession of marijuana. The following year, he is arrested on the same charge, and as things get hot, he implements precautions, such as banning women from joining, citing their inability to protect themselves from the police and rival gangs. In 1965 and 1966, he is arrested twice for assault with a deadly weapon. In the 1965 incident, he forced a pistol into a club patron's mouth and shot him twice for speaking ill against the Hells Angels. Even rival gangs are not spared from Barger's rage, and they found out the hard way when some of them stole his bike, and he had them whipped with bullwhips and beaten with spiked dog collars before using ball-pen hammers to break their fingers. The Oakland Hells Angels continue to establish their authority as the largest and strongest bike gang in the U.S., and Barger's influence is felt outside and inside the club. In his book Hells Angels: The Strange and Terrible Saga of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs, author and journalist Hunter S. Thompson writes about Barger, saying that,
"In any gathering of Hells Angels, there is no doubt who is running the show,"
describing him as a 6-foot, 170-pound warehouseman from East Oakland, the coolest head in the lot, and a tough, quick-thinking dealer when any action starts. About his character, Thompson says that,
"By turns he is a fanatic, a philosopher, a brawler, a shrewd compromiser, and a final arbitrator."
On the FBI radar. When Barger joined the Hells Angels, he had brought with him his group of Army veterans, and together they consider themselves anti-subversive and anti-communist patriots. This is evident when they attack a group of demonstrators marching from Berkeley to Oakland to protest against munitions shipments in October 1965, but it's something else that catches the FBI's attention. After copywriting the Hells Angels name and dipping his toes into film consultation, Barger and the Hells Angels started selling PCP, also known as Dust of the Angels, one of the most popular drugs at the time. For the first time, in 1967, the Hells Angels enters the FBI's comprehensive list of criminal organizations. And it is there to stay, as even when the PCP wave passes, they catch the latest methamphetamine train. As FBI agent Tim McKinley, who handled more Hells Angels-related cases than his peers noted, Barger even goes ahead and hires an experienced chemist, formerly of the Royal Dutch Shell Oil Company, to teach his crew how to make methamphetamine. Barger even leads the Hells Angels in surrendering hundreds of guns and pounds of explosives to the police in exchange for the release of arrested members. The exercise continues for 5 years, during which their main focus is on drug dealing. In January 1972, Barger is arrested with 4 other Hells Angels and charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and assault with a deadly weapon after 3 badly beaten men are discovered in the back of their car. During their arraignment, more charges are added to the list, including killing rival drug dealers and continued possession of firearms, despite agreeing to surrender them. Due to the incriminating evidence, he is sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, and he continues to lead the motorcycle club from his cell at the Folsom State Prison. He is paroled in 1977 and arrested less than a year later for parole violation by owning firearms. However, his wife admits that the firearms are hers, and he is acquitted. The RICO trial. In what is the most substantial effort yet by the FBI and local authorities to bring down Barger and the club for good, he and different associates from almost every Hells Angels chapters are indicted on racketeer. Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, statutes in June 1979. The prosecution team representing the government in the trial tries to demonstrate a pattern of behaviors, but the FBI, through McKinley, feel like the case is poorly prepared. Moreover, the FBI don't even have enough surveillance evidence to support the case, and the case ended in a mistrial, leading to Barger's release. Inside Operation Cactus. In losing the RICO case fuels the FBI into a more cautious and calculated approach to gathering evidence. But first, they have to find someone to help them gather inside information, and they find the perfect man, Anthony Tate. Tate, being the sergeant-at-arms of the Alaskan Hells Angels chapter, is close to the higher-ups, and he is more than happy to help for a fee. The FBI want to take their time, and Tate's availability commences a 3-year nationwide organized crime drug enforcement task force investigation, what would come to be known as Operation Cactus. During the course of the operation, Tate is tasked with going around the country buying firearms, drugs, and explosives from various Hells Angels chapters. He also wears a wire to record major meetings, especially as Barger was involved. In one recorded meeting, Barger praises Tate for representing the Hells Angel of the 90s, due to his efficiency in every task he carried out for the club. Tate became one of Barger's right-hand men, and he recorded their conversations and errands for the FBI. Over the next 3 years, the FBI gather enough evidence, and they decide to act on their intelligence in 1987, just before Tate bombing of the Outlaws' Chicago headquarters as a retaliation for the murder of an Anchorage Hells Angels member. On the 10th of November 1987, a total of 38 Hells Angels leaders, members, and associates are arrested in California, Alaska, Kentucky, and North and South Carolina on various conspiracy, weapons, and narcotics charges. Barger is arrested on the same day in Bay Area, where over 400 FBI, ATF, and California State Police officers raid homes and establishments believed to house Hells Angel members. Most of the members are charged with drug offenses, but Barger and his right-hand man, Michael O'Farrell, are also charged with conspiring to violate federal firearms and explosives laws. The trial goes on for 3 months and its costs soar up to $1 million before Barger is sentenced to 57 months in prison. He still tries to appeal the decision, but the decision is upheld and he spends 4.5 years in prison before being released in 1992. Upon release, Barger receives a lot of attention from journalists seeking interviews, to the outlaws who still have a grudge with him. However, Barger steps down from the Hells Angels leadership group before he died of liver cancer in his California home in June 2022. Imagine a character who transcends the boundaries of a motorcycle club, leaving an everlasting impact on the wider cultural canvas. That's who this next story is about. A man who not only withstood the trials imposed by the Hells Angels, but also emerged as a force that transformed the club's perceptions. His story is more than just bike revs and leather jackets. He is fearless, charismatic, and uniquely able to navigate through the rough and tumble of the bike gang world. Christy's story is one for the books, and with the experience he racks up, he is like a walking encyclopedia of Hells Angels history. Filled with tales intriguing enough to have anyone on the edge of their cozy Harley-Davidson bike. But how does a man who initially joins the club on probation rise to become one of the most visionary Hells Angels leaders? How is it that even after getting on the FBI's most wanted list, he is still influential in the Hells Angels biker gang? Well, it's a mystery we are more than willing to unravel together, so buckle up and let's hit the open road. Where the story began. Born in 1947 to Greek immigrant parents living in Ventura, California, George Christy Jr. is brought up in a loving, protective, and gentle family. While no one around him can predict his future in the bike club world, there's clearly something special about him as a child. However, when he visits Los Angeles with his father His first ever encounter with a biker changes his perspective on the biker subculture forever. He notices that everyone around is paying attention to the biker, but the biker is not concerned about what everyone else thinks. In high school, his personality astonishes many, including his principal, who accuses him of cheating when he scores highly on an IQ test. In turn, this changes his entire perspective on life, and at the age of 19, he already owns a Harley-Davidson Panhead, which is license enough for him to join a bike club. Into the biking world. After acquiring his first motorcycle for just $200 in 1966, Christy becomes a member of two outlaw biker gangs in succession, the Question Marks of Ventura and the Satan Slaves of Los Angeles. In these clubs, he is held in high regard, being one of the few outlaw bikers in America with a college degree. At this time, he is also working as an electrician for the Defense Department, and he marries his high school sweetheart, Cheryl. In bed with the Angels. Feeling the need to upgrade, Christy begins associating with prominent motorcycle members before finally moving on to the Hells Angels in 1975 as a probationary member. Within the next year, Christy establishes himself within the club, and his prowess is rewarded with initiation as a full-patch member of the Los Angeles County chapter. His determination to quickly move up the ranks is clear, and according to him, he really wanted to make a statement of some sort. It really wasn't the thought of criminality, it was more an interest to rebel. It was a commitment.
Most learn real fast.
In the 1970s, the concept of bike gangs is still new, and rivalries are not established. As Christy recalls, conflicts are not taken all that seriously, and instead of getting out guns after a fight, the losers would just buy breakfast. One of the reasons Christy falls in love with the biker gang is their inclusivity. Despite him being married and having children, he is fully accepted. He carries out club duties during the weekends and at night as he is committed to family and work matters. But that doesn't prevent him from being elected to the chapter's president's seat just 6 months after becoming a full-fledged member. However, the Hells Angels culture gradually changes with the establishment of more rival gangs. In the first brawl of its kind, which would change the history of the Hells Angels, Christy and 9 other members are at a motorcycle swap meet in Anaheim when they are attacked by the Mongols. The Mongols attack the defenseless Hells Angels in their numbers, but Christy and his friends manage to leave most of them with serious injuries before leaving. After that, the Mongols wear a patch reading California on their attire to show that they were the ones in charge. The Hells Angels have to take serious action before the disrespect escalates, and in July 1977, they vote unanimously to defend their territory by all means necessary, even if it means declaring war on their rivals, who are not ready for what comes next. In the next 4 months after the vote, an escalation in violence leads to the deaths of 4 Mongol members and an innocent 15-year-old boy during various shootings and bombings around San Diego and Los Angeles. Within the first 5 months of 1978, Christy manages to oversee the establishment of 2 new Hells Angels chapters, the Chatsworth-based San Fernando Valley chapter, approved by the Oakland Hells Angels leaders and formed by members of Satan's slaves who patch over in numbers, and the Ventura County chapter, which he subsequently forms. As things continue to heat up, he is fired from the Defense Department due to his Hells Angels connection, but he is already the most popular man in Ventura County, dominating its political and economic life. While his image in the county is admirable, in 1983, the California Organized Crime Control accuses the bike club of being the epitome of all outlaw motorcycle gangs, claims he denies, stating that it is merely a motorcycle club and a family. In efforts to further discredit the Hells Angels and depopularize them in Ventura, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, circulates a rumor that the gang plans to disrupt the 1984 Summer Olympics, set to be held in Los Angeles by supplying weapons to terrorists for an attack on Lake Casitas, which is hosting water sports. The ATF even visits business people in the county with pictures of Christy and other members to try and discredit them and assassinate their characters. When word gets to Christy, the Ventura chapter raises the $3,000 fee for Christy to carry the Olympic torch for 1 kilometer through Oxnard as part of the opening ritual for the Olympics. Christy achieves the feat, and he is cheered on by numerous Hells Angels, Crucifiers, and Heathens Bike Club members when he arrives in a remote pea field outside Point Mugu. The Olympic officials are initially unaware of the donation check, which is signed HAMCUS, but when Christy calls to explain that he wanted the money allocated specifically for a Special Olympics chapter in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, he is told that the donations are not designated directly for local programs. He sues the Los Angeles Olympic Organizing Committee twice, lawsuits which are both thrown out, especially as every document he submits is stamped with the Hells Angels death logo. With the controversies being aired on national television, Christy is now considered the second most powerful Hells Angel in the United States, behind only the international president Sonny Barger. He firmly denies the claims to avoid the attention on him, but is he a bit too late? On the radar and a close call. After the 1984 Olympics saga, Christy opts to lie low, but he can only do so for so long before Sonny Barger is diagnosed with throat cancer, loses his voice, and Christy has to become the public face of the Hells Angels. If the Olympic lawsuit had already brought Christy to the attention of local law enforcement authorities, becoming the face of the club did more than that. The attention brings the FBI to his doorstep, and a sting operation against him is launched in 1986. In need of someone to lure Christy into their trap, the Bureau assigns Michael Mulhern, a senior member of the Mexican Mafia and an FBI informant, to the case. Mulhern is told to make Christy an offer to hire the Mexican Mafia to kill Thomas Arthur Chaney, a former Ventura Hells Angel who outed the club's drug operations to the federal authorities and was being held in the Federal Correctional Institution in Safford, Arizona. Every conversation between them is recorded and delivered to the FBI, and Christy eventually takes the bait, offering Mulhern $500 and a 1973 Pontiac automobile for Chaney's head. Once the deal is on, the Bureau fakes Chaney's death, and Christy is arrested red-handed in the process of delivering Mulhern's pay in a motel room. Despite the numerous recordings and physical evidence presented, Christy has since maintained his innocence, claiming that the money was for old debt repayment and not payment for murder. However, once Mulhern gives his testimony in court, Christy seems to be in hot soup. However, his attorney is too good to be beaten, maintaining the argument that the authorities were retributing after Christy had accused them of harassing the club members and using the fame he gained after the 1984 Olympic torch relay to call them out publicly. Moreover, when the attorney puts Mulhern on the stand, everyone in the courtroom is led to discover his true identity as unlikable, insincere, and a pathological liar. As a result, the federal prosecutors are severely embarrassed, and with their case relying on their star witness, Christy is acquitted and he proceeds to host a party at the Hells Angels Ventura Clubhouse in the attendance of the members of the jury that set him free. It also serves as a fresh start to a life he never imagined himself living. Fame, fame, fame. After his heroics in court, Christy becomes more famous than ever, and the reputation of the Hells Angels rests in his hands. His influence is felt not only in the towns but also in schools, where he is invited to speak at high school and college graduation ceremonies. This only makes his role in the Hells Angels more prominent, making him a media darling. With the Hells Angels' foothold in the U.S. increasing, the club files a federal trademark infringement suit against Concord New Horizons for producing a film with Hells Angels in it without permission, a case that is ultimately settled out of court. In all his interviews, Christy insists that the Hells Angels as an institution are not involved in drug dealing and that any member caught engaging in drug dealing is thoroughly punished, even though law enforcement has a different opinion. A police officer in Ventura County even says about the club that they've taken the position right from the start that if they don't screw up in Ventura very much, there'll be no reason for the police to hassle them. And that has been pretty much the case. The Hells Angels locally have been involved in very few provable criminal incidents. The authorities also believe that by building a good reputation within the community, Christy ensures that the Hells Angels are too careful not to get caught, and if they are, they can get away with it. On his end, he runs legitimate businesses, including a tattoo parlor, a martial arts studio, a bail bonds firm, and a pornographic company. He also loves teaching karate and kung fu, which all create the perfect cover. However, it's only a short time before some fresh blood in the club begins to show themselves off, making them easier targets for the police and creating a major problem for Christy. Allegations and convictions. Despite already doing a good job of making the Hells Angels famous, Christy embarks on a journey to move the club forward and into the next century. And how does he do it? Starting with his 18-year-old son, George Christy III. He encourages a bunch of young boys to join the club, much to the annoyance of the older group. He even grants his son a full patch membership, against the club rules that he must have attained the age of 21. The police notice the young men constantly hanging around Christy, always dressed in skateboard style, wearing baseball caps backward and listening to hip-hop and rap music. In 1998, Christy's son and the younger group formed the Outfits, a group of teenagers who spread Vicodin, a highly addictive painkiller, in Ventura County high schools. The group is also tasked with watching the police movements and alerting the older Hells Angels in case of raids. The police effectively follow the Vicodin trail and raid Christy's tattoo parlor, the Ink House, his house, and his now ex-wife Cheryl's house, where they find thousands of Vicodin pills, connecting the Outfit to the Hells Angels and Christy. Christy and other club members are arrested, but the lack of cooperation between the sheriff's office and the DA's office sees Christy cut a deal in which he serves almost no jail time served for the Vicodin possession and distribution charge. For other counts, Christy only pleads guilty to possession of 2 grams of cocaine and methamphetamine and being under the influence of a controlled substance, which gets him 8 months of probation. Meanwhile, with his father's arrest and arraignment, Christy III gets a taste of how life in a biker gang can be, and he resigns to become a chef and lead a normal life. The draining case remains the longest and most expensive in Ventura history, and the residents are unhappy that despite the resources used, no one serves any significant jail term. The end of an era. In April 2011, Christy announces at a meeting that he is leaving the Hells Angels on the grounds that the club is too combative, which may lead to internal struggles. Having done more than enough to establish the club as a dominant force among other outlaw biker clubs, he is expected to keep his jacket with the Hells Angels patch, but he instead returns it, saying that he is no longer a Hells Angel for good. However, claims later surface that he was forced out of the club, especially fueled by his successor, Scott Sutton, who claims that he retired because he was about to be expelled for abuse of power. Even Sonny Barger bans all Hells Angels from having any contact with Christy, proving that there were other mitigating factors behind his retirement. Even in his retirement, Christy still rubs shoulders with law enforcement, having been arrested by the FBI over the bombing of 2 tattoo shops in 2007, with the intention of eliminating opposition to his own tattoo shop. He pleads guilty to 1 charge in exchange for the others being dropped, for which he serves a 10-month sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution, La Tuna. While he hardly speaks about his time with the Hells Angels, the 2013 documentary The Last American Outlaw and his 2016 memoir, Exile on Front Street, give a detailed account of his life events and his contribution to the club's fame, which cannot be understated.